Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your iplanit refresher training, specifically for Outward. And today we're going to be looking just at outcomes. So we had a look at, in the last session, we had a look at the system overall, sort of some of the everyday admin and navigating around the system. Today we're going to be looking at one of the central elements of iplanit, which is the outcomes module. So we're not here to talk about what exactly an outcome is. That's an Outward training thing, and Outward staff are very well versed in this. Outward have been using iplanit for a number of years now, so their commitment to outcome focused support is already being highlighted just by doing that. So what we're going to look at today specifically, we're just going to go through the outcomes module. It should be nice and simple, nice and clear. Hopefully most of you would have seen the system before, but for those of you who haven't used it very much, it's been designed with the sector, so it's supposed to be intuitive. It's supposed to be we always aim to develop the system to make sure it's usable in real life. We're going to look at how to create an outcome. We'll be looking at how to create actions, how you can update and edit those, and then a very important part for Outward in particular is linking to KPIs. We'll look at outcome notes, and we'll look at how you complete an outcome once it's been achieved. So for me, my own experience in managing social care services, I think outcomes were, people have spoken about personalisation and outcome focused services for a long time, but still very much a lot of the time we still have a lot of sort of time and task based. A lot of that comes from commissioners, but we are moving to a much more outcome focused approach, and iplanit has been designed to support you to do that. And obviously Outward have been committed to that for some time now. So when we're looking at outcomes, what we're looking at are things that people want to achieve. Now that might be a goal, it might be an aspiration, it may be a maintenance outcome. Some people think that outcomes have to be a change in status. Sometimes an outcome can be a maintenance outcome. You want someone to stay at a certain level of health and well-being, for example. And some may be preventative outcomes. So particularly in older people's services, which may not be as relevant for Outward, you may have an outcome which is to prevent service user X from going into hospital again this year, after going into hospital twice last year, whatever that may be. But you'll know from your own experience what Outward consider to be an outcome. So I'm going to switch over to your system now. I'm going to be using your test system today so that we're not looking at live data. And once you've logged in, if you go into an individual's record with the Work With Me button, then Outcomes module is all together in the Outcomes button. So if we click through to the Outcomes button, so we can see here, we've got one outcome already in progress. We know it's in progress because it's got a green circle. Depending on the device you're using, you can switch to a list view as well, if you want to just change the view. That's up to your personal preference. So you'll see you've got two descriptions of your outcome here. You've got in bold letters at the top, and then you've got an additional description below. When you're adding a new outcome, which I'll show you in a second, what that means is in bold there, that's what the person supported will see. So later on in this refresher training, we're going to be looking at the person's portal. When the person themselves, the supported person, can log in and they can see what outcomes they're working on, how far they've got. So that top description in bold there, I would like to lose some weight after lockdown. You can tell I added that because I need to lose some weight after lockdown. You can see after that that's what the person will see. Then the second description is a bit more detail, and that is for the staff's benefit. Only staff can see that. So when you have a new outcome, as you can see here, we've got a green circle. That means it's in progress. So if we had an outcome that's recently been completed, that green circle would have a tick in it. If you had a circle there that was red with a little cross, that means it's an outcome that's recently been completed, but it wasn't achieved for whatever reason that may be. And we'll look at those reasons as we go through the training, because they're very important in monitoring. And if you had a blue circle, it means it was pending. It means that it hadn't started yet for whatever reason. And you can set what those reasons being. Let's say someone wants to start a college course. You might not be able to start that outcome until September, for example. So that would be blue, saying you've identified this outcome, you've agreed with the person supported that this is an outcome you're going to work on, but we can't start yet because we're waiting for something else. Or you might be waiting for funding, or you might be waiting for a member of staff with relevant training to get going, something like that. So when we're adding a new outcome, the button at the top, create new outcome, the little plus button, nice and simple. That'll bring you through to this screen. So this is where we have the two different boxes, the two parts when you're setting up for describing what that outcome is. So the top box, the first box, this is what the person wants to achieve. But remember, this is what the person can see when they log in. And when we sort of get into that person portal training piece and your service users can start accessing their records, this is what they're going to see. So remember to write it in a nice accessible way, nice accessible language, and writing in the first person. So although this is in real life, you'd have real outcomes related to that person. For purpose of training, I'm going to use an outcome that maybe isn't that realistic, but for the purposes of training, it will demonstrate how the system works. So we can say this person would like to learn French. So that's a big outcome. That's a very bold, ambitious outcome. So that's nice and simple, first person. So it starts with an I, it's an I statement. This is what the person wants to achieve. So below, in this box, this is the information just for the staff, and you can put a bit more detail in here. So you can put things in here, such as, you know, what you think as a member of staff, as a supporter, how that outcome will improve their well-being, how it was identified, that sort of thing. So a bit more information so that your team, everyone working with that person, knows why you're trying to achieve that outcome, which is just as important. So we can say, let's say, we're working with, we'll call her Anne for today. Anne has always been interested ever since a holiday to France. We think that having something to focus on and work towards whatever it may be. Like I said, there's a reason I chose this as an example, because when we get onto the actions piece, just as an illustration, obviously in real life, your outcomes could be anything from, you know, for something in 2 weeks' time, you know, I want to go to a football match or something like that. Nice, simple outcomes. Some of them might be longer term. Some of them might be health related. Some of them might be well-being related. Some might be recovery outcomes, re-ablement outcomes. Might be shorter term, longer term. This is just an example. So please don't think that you have to go around and support all your supported people to learn French now. Okay. So once you put your detail in here, a little bit of just for the staff's benefit. What is that? You know, why are we doing it? What do we think the impact of this is going to be? So once you've completed that, then when are we going to start working towards it? Well, this is something we can start working towards straight away. So that will automatically go to today's date. Most instances, that will be the case. Sometimes you might have to set it in the future. So you just click on the box and you can choose the date. Let's say we can't start working on this till July, because that's where Michelle, the French support worker, comes back to work or something like that. So then you have a review date. So that review date will automatically be set to 6 months. You may have it may actually be something that you want to achieve before that. Again, you can set that date. And also, if you want to put any justification for that, you can put it in the box at the top here. What that means when you have a review date, what that means is as you're working towards it, as you approach the review date or the date you want to achieve it at least, or review it, you'll start getting alerts over here. On your alert panel, it will say that this outcome's coming up for review or it's overdue. something needs to be done about it. We're using a test system today, by the way, so hopefully you won't have 1,200 overdue outcomes, but obviously your test system doesn't get used every day. So the person who's created it will always be, well, in most instances, it will be the person who's writing it. So I'm logged in as CCare admin, so it's automatically chosen me. Most of the time, that will be the case. So then when you say person supported, this is where you're assigning this outcome to a part of the team. So you'll have the choice of all of the people who are linked to this service user, to this person supported. That doesn't mean that only that person can work on it. That means that all it means is that person is taking responsibility for it. It's been assigned to them. Everybody who works with that person can still work on this outcome, but only one person has been assigned responsibility for it. That may be, like I said, you might have a support worker who already speaks French, so it makes most sense for them to be, to sort of take ownership of this outcome. Everyone else can still work on it. You may be, if you've got a health and wellbeing outcome, you may have a member of staff with some particular training that's most useful. If you've got a mental health outcome or a recovery outcome, you might have a member of staff with a background that is most suitable for that. Or it may just be the primary support worker, the main person who works with that. If Anne here has the same person 5 days a week, then they might be the best person to assign it to, since they're most likely to be able to coordinate the rest of the team. So that doesn't mean only that person can work on it. We're just saying this is who's going to take responsibility for it, who's going to take ownership of working with this person for that outcome. So most people have a plan. You can reverse link an outcome back to a plan. What does this relate to? So if it's an outcome, say around health and well-being, something like that, or improving someone's communication, or working towards someone's independence in personal care, for example, then actually it probably is related to some of the things in a plan. So you can assign it. So we've got Anne's test plan that's in there. We can say, yeah, this is actually linked to their overall plan. Or it might have nothing to do with what's already in the support plan. This might be something you've identified in an MDT review or in a plan review meeting. It's completely new. It's not part of their everyday sort of support plan. It's a new activity. It's a new goal, a new thing that they want to do. So you say, actually, there's no plan attached to it. This is just an outcome someone wants to achieve because they want to achieve it. And then we have the private yes/no. So just like with support plans, that we'll look at in the next training session, and just like throughout iplanit in calendars and things like that, if you say something's public or private, what that means is when the person supported has decided, actually, this is a private thing, that when I invite other people, so it might be family and friends that they invite to have access to their records as well, whether they want them to see it or not. So they might be fine with their mum knowing everything that's going on, but they might not want, let's say their outcome is to give up smoking. They might not want a relative, they might not want their aunt to know that they're trying to give up smoking, or whatever it may be. So they can say, yes, this is private. And then when they invite that person, they can say that person can't see anything that I've said private. But in this case, we're going to say, no, this isn't private. I don't mind. Who knows that I'm trying to learn French? And then we click save. And there we have the new outcome. And that will appear in your outcome screen. So we've got the due date here. And you can see we've got some other icons dotted around. So the padlock, that just lets you know, is this a public or a private outcome? This is the linking a file to it. So this is the same, where you have the media section that we looked at in the last training, you can attach media to it. So let's just say, look, we're going to go to this, we're going to this college to learn French. This is where I go for my French lessons. You can add that to it. That picture is now linked. So when the person logs in and they look at their outcomes, that picture will sit with it. It just brings it to life. It makes it a bit more accessible, a bit clearer for people, particularly those with a learning disability and autism. It just adds that extra layer of accessibility. You can also link documents to it as well, but remember, as we talked about last time, only staff could see that. So you might have you know, we might have some information from a social worker, let's say, saying, you know, this is why we want Anne to lose weight, and then you can say, okay, well, there'll be a document in here, we can attach that to it. Only the staff can see that, just as a reminder. But this little icon will let you know there's something linked to it. And then we have this little speech bubble. That's where you add notes to an outcome, and we'll look at that specifically in a second. Excuse me. So that's as simple as it is to add an outcome. So the next thing we want to do is we can add or remove KPIs to an outcome. So although we say KPIs, these are actually frameworks. These are the measures that you'll all be familiar with against which your performance is measured. Not your performance as an individual, but as the services performance. So if we go on to add and remove KPIs, we can open up. So you can see nothing's been linked to this one yet. And now the way we've configured this for outward is if I try to complete this outcome now, let's say I want to say, yes, we've completed that, and submit it, it won't let me finish it because I haven't attached the KPI. So this is something when we configured the system for outward that we've implemented so that you can't save an outcome until you've attached KPI to it. And so we added and removed KPI. So that you can see there's none here, current KPIs. So let's have a look at the KPIs we have. So outwards only have their own internal KPIs. Some of our customers may have things like CQC Chloe's, or you might have KPIs that a particular local authority insists on, things like that. But in this case, we've got your outward key performance indicators. These should be something that you're familiar with. So if we open them up, so from here we can link these KPIs. So right, what do we think is appropriate? What do we think this outcome highlights? Well, so let's have a look. So, well, actually, this is part of training, so we're going to link to that one. We think this is participation in work, training, education, because they're learning a new skill. They're going to go to French classes and meet other people, so we think this is going to improve their social well-being. So you can attach more than one, but make sure that you're quite discerning about it. Don't just link everything every time, otherwise the data that comes out will be fairly useless. And this is a personal goal and aspiration. So we've got 3 links now to that outcome. So now you can see this outcome that we're working on, we've agreed with the person supported. These are the KPIs that we think that this outcome relates to. And further on, I'll show you what happens to all that data, because it's really important. So we can come back to that outcome. So now we've linked some KPIs. So we've identified the outcome and we've linked the KPIs, we've attached an image. But actually learning French as an outcome is actually quite a big thing. So what there are steps towards it. And so what we can do is add an action. What they're called in iplanit is an action. Some places call them step goals. Some places might call them, some services call them mini outcomes, whatever it may be. But here we can add our actions. Let's have a look. So we go to view actions. We've got no actions attached to this yet. So now we can add them with the add action button. So now it's say, so what's the first thing? What's the first mini step towards achieving this outcome? So we can say, first of all, we need to find a French teacher. We can start that straight away, but actually we don't want to spend too long doing that. We'll do that in the next month, let's say. Let's do it. We'll say by the 10th of June, we want to find a French teacher. It's the same process in terms of assigning it and save. So now we've got another action. What's the next one? We will need to buy some French textbooks, but actually we need to find the teacher first. So if we will start that in a couple of weeks' time after we've done the first bit. And again, we don't want to leave that too long, so we'll set that date to be 3rd June. So what we're saying here is we haven't started it, it's on hold. We're not quite ready to start. or your resources not in place. That's probably the best one. So let's say resources aren't in place to start this yet. So now we've got a blue circle. That means we're not working on this yet. We're going to do the other things first. And then once you've found a French teacher, you can attend French lessons. Again, we'll leave that open. So you can see why that's the reason I chose this rather strange outcome, just because it really helps to illustrate how the actions work. These are steps towards a big outcome. Now, you may not always have an action attached to an outcome. It's not compulsory. You're not going to be forced to do that. You're not going to be forced to assign an action to an outcome. You might have a really simple, easy to achieve outcome that takes a month. You don't need the actions. But some of the bigger ones, you're recording those actions. So if we come back to the action screens, now we can see I've got a little icon on the top. It lets me know there's some actions linked to that, and there are 2 in progress. That's why it only says 2. So if we go to the actions again, let's say, oh, okay, we're going shopping for these. I'm going to update that to the doing it. Customer's ready to start that now. And click switch. So now we've gone green. So we're working on all of these as we speak, and that will update when it refreshes. So, and now you will see we can also add actions just from this little button at the bottom here as well. So we don't have to go to the top. We can just add them as they come. Like I said, not every single outcome will have an action, but some really big outcomes, or if they're maintenance outcomes, you might just need regular actions towards it. So let's say you've been working with this person on their outcomes, but actually you're working with them on their actions. Instead of writing in your daily notes just generic notes, and we've looked at notes and logs, we're actually going to record what we're doing about this outcome. So this is where we see, if we go to the actions first, right, so we found a French teacher. So you can leave in your note what we did here, add a note, and you can see the topic's automatically chosen for you. You're recording against this particular action. So what you're saying is, we looked on Google and spoke to a couple of French teachers and found one that specializes in accessible learning, something like that. And save. Okay, that's all we had to do for that action. It's not a particularly complicated one. So now we can see, now we can update this, right, we've done this action. So for that, it's on the menu, the top right hand corner, these little buttons here. Status, yeah, we did it. We did that, we've achieved that. Then we have a selection of what's the main reason that we achieved that. And it could just be the person was really engaged with their support workers, or their circle of support helped, or it was really easy, we had loads of French teachers around. So we had great availability of resources, whatever the primary reason is. And you can put some additional info in here if you want to about why you did that. And now we can submit. And now we've got a green tick. We've done that one. Okay, so now we're going to buy some French textbooks. Again, we can add a note specifically against this action. So whatever that may be, save that. And again, we're saying, okay, we've got the French books, we've done that, so we can update status. Again, right, we've done that. Main reason, there's loads of bookshops around, whatever it may be. So now you're going to attend French lessons. So every time you go to a French lesson, it might be every week, you can say, first French lesson, you can put a bit of detail, how she got on, things like that. Obviously, your own note taking will be better than ours in a training. Etc., etc. I'm not going to sit here and type all the way through training. But then each time you go, you can say, you know, we went to another lesson, we did blah, 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 blah. Again, in real life, you'll have real outcomes. But what you're building is a story now. So every time you do something, your record keeping becomes meaningful. You know, and I'm just typing that. So you're starting to build up a story. Now, when you look at record keeping, when I was a manager myself, one of my biggest frustrations at the end of every month was reviewing 30 pages of what someone had for breakfast and that they had a shower. What this module does is focuses your service. You're not changing anything you do. We know that how good outward staff are. We know you're already working with people on their outcomes. You're already working to improve people's well-being and doing the things they want to achieve, and that really personalized approach. But under traditional ways of recording, it's very hard to actually evidence that. Here, with this module, really simply, without having to change the way you work, we're now keeping notes, we're making our records about what someone has been doing or how you've been helping someone achieve those outcomes. And that's really important. The way I always describe it is, you know, if you're having a party and you're catching up with some old friends, you'd never talk about the fact that you got up and washed your hair and then had breakfast, because, you know, that's not something. What you talk about are making new friends, learning new skills, moving house, getting a pet, trips you took, you know, recovering after an accident, all of those things. All of those things are outcomes. So, you know, and the traditional approach, why did, you know, that old-fashioned approach is very much, you know, oh, we got up, we had breakfast. That doesn't tell us anything. What we're telling here is someone's quality of life story. And I've been very excited about it. It's my favorite part of iPlanit. I wish I'd had it when I was running services. So just to show you what happens to that information, if we go back to Aaron's record, all of those notes pull through to the notes and logs board that we looked at in the last session. And we've got outcome notes here. So if we go and have a look at the topics, you can see here now we've got specific notes against each action, each outcome. So we can see, so let's have a look at this topic. So with all of these notes now are actually telling a story. We're actually telling the story of someone's life. We're not just saying what they did in the morning, what they did at night, what they had for lunch. We're saying this is how all of the amazing staff at Outward are supporting people to have a better life, to do the things they want to do, to improve their well-being, you know. So it's really important, really powerful tool. And I know from feedback from our other customers as well, CQC love it. So, you know, because you're really telling that story. So that's really the principles of creating an outcome, creating actions and how you update them, attaching a KPI, which is very important. Now, if let's say you need to tweak an outcome a little bit, then in your menu you have edit or view this outcome. It's the same thing. You can now edit. You want a bit more information that you want the rest of your team to have, let's say. You know, I'll just put in X, Y, and Z because we're in training. I'm not going to drag it on. Save that, and now you just updated it. As with everything in iPlanit, everything's time and date stamped. Everything's changed. When any changes like that happen, it will appear in your dashboard. So let's say you've been off for a couple of days, you come back. If something's changed on an outcome with one of the people that you work with, that will appear in your dashboard. You know what's been happening. Obviously, you can see all the notes as well, so you can see how far someone's got. So let's say you've attended lessons for a year, and you've now, and the person supported can now speak French. Then you want to change the status. So that we go up to the menu. This is the main outcome that's been achieved now, not just the actions. The main outcome has now been achieved. So we go to status, and we can say, yes, we did it. Now, when you select we did it, you have that selection, that sort of selection of reasons. Why did we achieve this outcome? Where were we? So if you choose we did it, then that primary reason is there. And let's say the person was very engaged with his support team. And you can add a bit more detail here if you want to as to how it went in, whatever. But that primary reason is a drop down for a particular reason, which I'll show you at the end. You can also say, actually, we didn't achieve this, and that's just as important. If you don't achieve an outcome for whatever reason, you've got a different set of reasons to select from. It could be staff availability, it could be lack of resources. And there's no one in North London who can teach French. It could be there's a lack of funding. It could be that the person left the sports, whatever it may be. Whatever those reasons are, you can record as well. And it's just as important to record those reasons. We're going to say, yes, we achieved that because the person was really engaged with this support team. You can leave an extra little note there about it, click submit, and now you can see that this outcome has been achieved. Once you've achieved an outcome or not achieved an outcome, if it was not achieved, you have a red cross. After a certain amount of time, you want to leave them there for a little bit so the person can see them and give that sense of achievement. But once you're finished with it, let's say a month has passed, you're working on a new outcome, then you can just archive that outcome and it will sit in archived. If you want to see all the archived outcomes, it's this button here. So these are the unarchived, these are ones that are active outcomes. These are your archived ones, or you can look at all of them at the same time. If you've completed an outcome or an action, but actually you've made a mistake, you weren't quite there, if you go to rollback, this will undo its status, and now it's made it active. So you can roll it back a stage. So if you said, actually, we did this outcome, but actually, no, you made a mistake, there's still a couple of things to do, then that option, once you've changed the status, you can roll back and go back, and it'll undo that status for you, so you can carry on working on it if you've got more things that you need to do. So that really is the outcome process. I know there's quite a bit to take in, hopefully you're familiar with it, but really we add a new outcome. Once you've added your new outcome, you can add any actions that might be needed towards it. We can add our KPIs to say what it's related to, and we can complete that outcome after we've left specific notes against it, so we can see what's going on. We can link media to it, and that really is the outcomes module in a nutshell. And it's as I said, hopefully you find it easy to use, because we've tried to design it to be easy to use, and without really changing what you're doing. Your focus is, iplanit's allowing your focus to be evidence in how you're achieving those outcomes. You've already recorded elsewhere, the essential tasks that people have to do, and now you're evidencing the really personalized approach that you're taking. Now, I'm not too sure the audience that we have on this particular training session, but just to give you a quick look at what happens to that data. If we have a look at the reports, you may not have access to reports, but just to demonstrate why that information is so important. If we look at all of these, all of that data that we've pulled through, we can now see all of those KPIs. So when you're monitoring, whether it's the CQC coming in to inspect, or whether it's your internal teams or your management, you can drill down, you can go down by particular locations. Came back too far. You can go back by certain date ranges, but you can say, out of all of the outcomes that we said support people in their economic well-being, we're achieving 73% of them. That's really good percentage. And there's 15% that we haven't achieved for whatever reason. But what you can then do, why are we achieving those? And where those actions that we selected, where we said, why did we achieve it or why didn't we achieve it? Now we've got a graph. We can see this is so this informs what you're doing, this informs how you can improve, but also celebrate best practice. And we can see why we're achieving these outcomes is because our staff are really good at keeping the plan and the actions and the outcomes reviewed. The person is really engaged with their support team, got a really positive staff attitude, and that's what's helping people improve, achieve those outcomes. But just as important is looking at why aren't we achieving these outcomes? And now we can see here the person was unable to engage with this support. If that's your primary reason, that can go back, that can inform either your training on how you identify those outcomes or how you make those outcomes more realistic. If the person changed their mind, again, it might be maybe you need to change your approach to identifying outcomes, but people change their mind, that's what happens. So you've got a lot of really rich data, and that's why we've configured the system like that with Outward. So you can really drill down, you know, we can say housing and tenancy management, we can see how well we're doing across the board, or we can drill down. And again, like I said, the feedback we get, CQC inspectors love looking at this, because we haven't got a list of tasks that have been completed. Yeah, that's how support and care were done 20 years ago, just ticking a list. This is saying this is real difference that you're making to people's lives, and CQC can see that. And the CQC can say, oh, well, it's all very well saying you've achieved this many outcomes. How are you doing that? And then that's when they can go, let's go and have a look at Anne then. Let's have a look, and we can see on Anne's outcome notes, this is all of the thing. Look at all of this work, all the specific work we've been doing to help someone achieve their outcomes. And that really is really, really valuable. So that's the outcomes module for your point of view as you go around your daily work. I'm just going to show you, we haven't rolled out the person portal with Outward yet. We just, after this refresher training course, we're going to start looking at that towards the end. But I'm going to show you on our demo system. I'm going to log in as a person supported. Okay, so this is what the person will see. Now, your configuration will be slightly different, because your support plans look different. We've got different icons, but this is how Joe can see, this is how the person supported can see their plan. We're not looking at that today, we'll look at that next week. But if we look at the action plan, this is how someone sees their outcomes. So when we looked from, let's have a look at your system again. If we have a look at those in bold, this is the part that pulls through to the person supported. So now they can see what those outcomes are, and but we haven't got the other description. So these are nice and bold, nice and clear. We've got pictures attached. That's where that media attaching comes from. So it really brings it to life. Plus, as you update your progress, we have a nice little progress bar here, so Joe can see how far along this outcome he is. We can also have a look at the actions. We can also see who those actions have been assigned to. So again, this is really really helps bring it to life, makes it really accessible in terms of who's doing what, who's supporting Joe, in this case it's Joe, to achieve those outcomes. We can also see recently achieved outcomes. So anything said, you know, this is what we've achieved. So Joe's got a real sense, of the person supported has got a real sense of achievement over things they have done, until you archive them. Once they're archived, then they can't be seen. But we can also see what's not been done, and that's just as important information for as a supporter as well as for the person supported, because you might be something you want to revisit later, or the person supported might bring it up and you can say, well, look, remember we looked at that, we couldn't do it for whatever reason, shall we try something else? So this is how we add that layer of personalization, that layer of inclusion. When these are the person supported outcomes, after all, these aren't our outcomes, these belong to the person supported. So they've got that level of ownership. And just to illustrate, and this will be useful before we get onto support plans, when someone invites, and they can Joe, or in your case, in your test systems case, and they can invite people to have access to have this same login. So if you're inviting a new contact, let's say they're inviting a relative, whatever, all they need their email address, and this is where they can say, yes, this person can see everything, even if I said it's private. Or actually, no, this person can't see the things that I've said are private. You know, I don't want my male cousin knowing about my personal care routines in the morning, but I don't mind my mum knowing about it. That's what that private yes, no means. Sometimes showing the screen makes that a lot clearer. But your screen, like I said, your login will look roughly the same, but your configuration is slightly different. But this is what the person will see when we roll that out for Outward, and what the outcomes will look like.